I recognize this gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
I thank the chair very much. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America, formulated by the people of the United States to create a more perfect union. We know these words. They are the core of our beings. Our nation of over 300 million people embraces diversity and individualism, has birthed a citizenry that speaks many languages, holds a plethora of deep religious beliefs or none, and practices customs and traditions originating on distant shores. We are unique. African Americans, in particular, have a unique history embedded in slavery, discrimination, and the denial of our rights, but voting rights have been our refuge. Today I rise and say there is no option other than passing the John Robert Lewis Voting Enhancement Act and the freedom to vote. There is no option. We do not just survive, our nation thrives because of our shared belief that helps us against all odds. It helps us in World War I and II and the conflicts in and around. It helps us in wars where we have lost our young men and women. We have a country formed out of many to become one people. Americans share the same compact that we are a nation of laws that flow from the most crucial and fundamental law, the Constitution of the United States. The impact of the Constitution and its basic premise can be summarized by the simple belief that every individual is entitled to an equally valid vote. We saw in 2020 that fragile vote that saw the largest turnout in any presidential election in the history of the United States, that is a very long time, challenged from its very beginning, challenged on the day of the election, continued to be challenged and misrepresented and distorted, and election officials attacked and intimidated, even removed from office. And so I stand today on the shoulders not only of Dr. Martin Luther King, who I, in fact, viewed him as a modern-day prophet, our own colleague John Robert Lewis, but I stand on the shoulders of a widow, Coretta Scott King, who I got to know in the aftermath of her husband's death. And she worked without ceasing to have his principles, his values, his understanding of the beloved community recognized, and to continue the sense of the rightness and righteousness of voting. I had the privilege of working for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It will always be a special part of my history. I had the privilege of working with the names of individuals that we know: Andy Young, Hosea Williams, James Orange, some of the generals and foot soldiers that were in the army of Dr. Martin Luther King's beloved America. And yes, I had the privilege, I call it that, of walking on plantations to try to register black sharecroppers, frightened and intimidated, though dignified, to vote. Their intimidation was real because those who owned the general store or the plantation were not eager for those blacks in the South to vote, or for those Hispanics and others who worked, as Dr. King worked with Cesar Chavez in the farm workers. They were not eager for them to vote. And so today, as we are about to watch as a step is to be made, both in terms of the speech of a president and vice president, but the actual vote in the Senate, we cannot isolate ourselves to focus on one or two persons. We really have to focus on who we are as a nation, that this vote binds us together. It is the voice of the people. And the Constitution, it trumps any figment of our imagination that may be considered something legitimate. The filibuster is not legitimate. It is a rule of one body of this Congress. It is a rule that, as civil people do, we adhere to rules. We adhere to those in this House. I agree with that. But when a rule is used to trump and deny the basic constitutional values of the 14th Amendment and the 5th Amendment of due process and equality, as it was utilized in the 20th century by segregationist senators to deny civil rights laws. Mr. Speaker, it is important that I stand here today on Coretta's name and Martin's name and Bobby's name and John's name that we must demand courage, and to not vote for the Voting Rights Act is not an option. I will not allow that to happen, because I will stand with every breath in my body to ensure that the American people can vote without intimidation, and they will be intimidated without the laws of the Voting Rights Act, Enhancement Act, and as well the Freedom to Vote Act. At that, I yield back.